This episode is brought to you by Daniel Goleman and his legendary quote, "A big part of emotional intelligence is being able to name your feelings."
Welcome to the Stephan Dyer Podcast, my people.
Hello, my people. ¿Cómo están, damas y caballeros? Welcome to the Stephan Dyer Podcast, where we welcome people with remarkable stories for amazingly vulnerable conversations. I am Stephan Dyer, former banker turned comedian and lifestyle entrepreneur, and this episode is remarkably special. We have Gil Penalosa, the founder and chair of the successful Canadian non-profit organization 880 Cities, as well as first ambassador of World Urban Parks, the international representative body for the city parks, open space, and recreation sector. In addition, Gil leads a private international consulting firm, Gil Penalosa and Associates, providing services as an inspirational keynote speaker, instructor of master classes, and advisor to decision makers. Not only that, my friends, Gil Penalosa is running for mayor of Toronto, and we are so excited to have him here. We're going to talk about his extraordinary resume, extraordinary accomplishments, and I also have a special guest today who was here on episode 12, Diego Hidalgo Sa, one of my best friends and one of the smartest people, cultured people that I know, passionate for Toronto. He actually also worked in the construction of two subways, the University and Spadina expansion line and the Eglinton Crosstown. Has been living here for 12 years. So we're super excited because we want to meet Gil and ask him about the 2022 Toronto mayoral election, which is scheduled, in case you didn't know, for Monday, October 24, 2022. And we're personally super excited. We're going to talk about more like all the incredible things that he's done across all the continents, more than 200 cities, and my favorite, La Ciclovia in Bogotá, that I've been a part of. His focus is on the design and use of parks and streets as great public places, as well as the promotion of sustainable mobility. In other words, walking, riding bicycles, using public transit, and the new use of cars. So welcome to the unbreakable, the unmistakable, the highly capable Gil Penalosa. How are you, my friend?
Thank you very much. I'm very, very happy to be here.
Did you like my intro?
Oh my God, amazing. By the way, I know there's a lot of people from Toronto and
Yes.
a lot of people not, but a lot of the things that we are going to talk about are just as relevant in Toronto or Mississauga or Calgary or Vancouver or actually any North American city.
Yes, one of my favorite things about your incredible resume, and I want to talk about the ciclovia first and how we can maybe implement parts of it in Toronto. So for those of you who don't know, throughout his career, Gil has been a strong advocate for improving city parks, making his first mark in Bogotá, Colombia, where he led the design and construction of over 200 parks, including Simón Bolívar, a 113-hectare park in the heart of the city. And his team also radically transformed the ciclovia, open streets, from a program of a few kilometers to one that sees over 1 million people walk, run, skate, and bike along 121 kilometers of Bogotá's city roads every Sunday of the year, and today's internationally recognized and emulated. So yeah, lots of these things can be applied to other cities. So Gil, my first question to you is how this ciclovia project is just wonderful. Are any of these parts applicable to Toronto? Can we do anything similar here?
Oh, many things. The ciclovia, which in Toronto we call open streets, it could be fantastic. In Toronto, for the listeners, more than half of us that live in Toronto were born in another country.
Yes.
And actually, so this is really the most multicultural city in the world. And from multiple cultures, like there is not one culture with more than 3% of the population, because there are some cities that might have 30, 40% of the population from somewhere else, but usually it's from one place, like many people from Asia in Vancouver, or many people from Mexico in Los Angeles. But in Toronto is from everywhere. But people do not really know each other. During the week, people are working, and then Saturdays and Sundays, then the Jamaicans with the Jamaicans, the Indians with the Indians.
Yes.
But what if? I mean, what is the ciclovia? For people that don't know about it, it's really, really simple concept. You open streets to people and close them to cars, and the magic happens. When I became in charge of it, it was a small program of about 17 kilometers, and I turned it into 121, the largest pop-up park in the world.
Wow.
And I was obsessed with connecting. It was only in the upper income area of the city. I was obsessed with connecting everybody, the wealthiest people and the poorest people. And this really connects everybody, the young and the old and the rich and the poor, the fat, the skinny, everybody. That's why this is so magical. This is great for many, many reasons. One, it reminds everybody that the streets are public space. The streets belong to everybody. It's not just to move cars. And the streets can have different uses according to the time of the day of the week of the year. So streets as public space is really important. Also because it's a place of social integration, which is really critical. Also because we get to know the city. Imagine waking up every Sunday and saying, oh, today, let's say we could do it in Toronto from Victoria Day in May to Thanksgiving in October. And you wake up every Sunday and say, oh, today I'm going to have brunch in Little Italy, and the next Sunday, Little India, the next one in Hyde Park, on the beaches or whatever. It could really be amazing. And the cost is almost nothing. All you need is, if you have streets and people, then you have the only two elements that you need. And when I was saying about mixing people, look, I really think that the only place in cities like Bogota, and it might be also in Toronto if we do it, that the wealthiest people meet with the poorest people as equals is in the ciclovia. It's a place where the owners and CEOs of the large corporations and their families meet with their minimum wage workers and their families as equals. They don't live in the same building. Their children don't go to the same schools. Sometimes they don't even go to the same restaurants. But all of a sudden here they meet as equals. I mean, one might be on a $5,000 bicycle, the other one on a $50. But bicycles do not differentiate. One might be using a $300 running shoes, the other one $20 shoes. It doesn't matter. So this is really a place of social integration. That's why this is so magical. When I started working in cities, I have worked in over 350 different cities, and I have spoken about this everywhere. And now we got over 500 cities around the world that are doing it. And if maybe your elected officials don't think this is so hot because it comes from Bogota, well, Paris is doing it every Sunday. Even during the winter, Paris is doing it. And where did Paris copy? In Bogota. I took the commissioners of transportation and planning in New York. They came to Bogota for a weekend. They were amazed. They went back to New York and they said, we got to do it. And then they are doing it in the summer. So yes, this is something that works in cities of 100,000 or 3 million or 10 million with different kinds of weather. So I think that in Toronto, eventually, we could even have it sometime in the winter time. It's like in Bogota, we do it every Sunday during the daytime from 7 to 2. But then at one point, someone said, why don't we do it at night? And then there's one night a year that is at night. Wow. So the same thing could happen in Toronto. We could do a summer from May to October, but maybe we could do a couple of days in the middle of the winter to try to get people out of their homes into the public space.
Yeah, I remember Nuit Blanche here. It's cold, but everybody goes out to the streets. A lot of streets are closed, and it really connects you to the city, because I feel like, especially now after a pandemic, what does it mean to be Torontonian or from New York or San Diego when most of the time you've been at home? And that sense of identity of belonging to a city and being Torontonian has been diluted because you don't feel so connected to the city anymore. So I love that.
And you told me that a lot of people that listen to the podcast are immigrants. I think that everybody, non-immigrants and immigrants, especially the immigrants, we gotta stop thinking about the winter as something negative.
Yes.
The winter issue in Toronto is just a mental issue. You know, the reality is that in Toronto, we only get 123 centimeters of snow per year. This is a 20-year average. So it's about the height of your dinner table. That's how much snow we get over 5 months. It's almost nothing. So the reality is that also it won't change just because we worry about it.
Yeah.
So the reality is that we might have plus 35 in the summer and we might have minus 25 or minus 30 in the winter, and we need to adjust. And winter clothing now is thin and light and better. So we need to go out. The problem is that even the media in September, they start saying, oh my God, winter is coming. Oh, if you can go to Arizona, go to Arizona. If you can go to Florida, go to... My God, those people that do the media, they are the ones that need to go away.
Yeah.
Because we need to have positive people talking about the weather to say, oh, you know, next week we're going to have a snowstorm. Oh, amazing. Go get the snow pants and go get the shoes and be ready to take your kids to the park. It's going to be like God is going to paint everything white overnight or something. And we need to do activities like having the Nuit Blanche or having an open streets. Also, like if we have things like movies in the park, if it's in the winter, let's make sure we have really good sound, good screen, hot chocolate, beaver tails. So we got to do things differently. I think that during COVID, it was interesting because during the lockdown, when all the places to do yoga and Tai Chi and whatever were shut down, people went to the parks. The parks were full of people. But then, for example, one of the things that I want for Toronto is that all of the large parks and medium-sized parks, they need to be winterized. We need to have the washrooms open. It's incredible, but Toronto is a winter city, and the washrooms in the parks and public places are closed for 8 months of the year.
What?
It's like if the public space was just a summer infrastructure, when the public place is 365 days of the year. So we really need to have, so I do think that winter could be so much more fun. And the nice thing about the public sector is that we can learn from each other. Cities like Edmonton has a city manager for winter activities.
Wow.
All that person does is think how to get people out and have fun in the winter.
That's fascinating. You were born in Colombia. You've been here for 23 years in Toronto. You obviously sound very passionate about it. And you're running for mayor. What do you love the most about Toronto? And what are the main things that come to mind that we can improve about this city?
Well, I think that by far what I love most about Toronto is that is so multicultural. When you go to any meeting, anywhere, in the private sector, in the public sector, about movies or about sports or about the economy or whatever, there's always lots of people from other places in the world. Like, no one looks at you bad because you have an accent or because you don't speak English perfectly or because you come from somewhere, because there's lots of people from everywhere. And it's great, you know, India and Pakistan might be next to going to a war, but here you have an Indian restaurant, and next to it there's a Pakistani restaurant, and next is an Indo-Pakistani restaurant. and I think that's what makes Toronto so much fun. I really love the city, and of course I think it's good. With the kind of work that I do, that I advise cities around the world, I really could live anywhere. I spend 60-70% of my time working outside of Toronto. But I choose Toronto because I love it. Of course, it's a good city. But what I think is that it could be even much better. But what I love the most is by far that it is so multicultural in everything, in the food, in the religion, in the way people dress, in the kind of sports that people do. On any area that you think about, there is the world variety within the city.
I love it. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty. And Diego, with his knowledge of Toronto being so passionate, you're going to hear Diego's voice. And Diego's a big fan of yours as well. So, Diego, let's get into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, like you said, I'm super passionate about the city. I've worked in a couple of subway projects. I'm a bit of a junkie when it comes to municipal politics, and I'm super interested in seeing the city getting better and better. So, I mean, I think that one of the things that I would like to highlight is that I moved here 12 years ago, and instead of seeing the city do better, I've seen it do worse. It's gotten way more expensive to live in, more difficult to get around. The city's streets are dirtier, they're more dangerous, there's more crime, which seems sort of counterintuitive for me. I also came from an American country that has a lot of issues, and when I came here to Canada, I always thought, wow, I'm going to a place where things are actually going to work, and you can do better in life. But it's gotten harder to be a young person in Canada, like to have a family in a city like Toronto. I want to stay here. I don't want to live out in the suburbs and have to live Toronto because I need more space. But it sort of, the city pushes you out, and that sort of like leads me into my first question, and I think it's the most important topic for a lot of people our age, which is the affordability problem that this city has. What do you think, and what do you suggest? What should we do to make the city more affordable in terms of housing?
Well, first, I think that it's interesting that you mentioned those other cities, because 30 years ago or less, Toronto was by far the best city in Canada. Toronto had the best public transit system, the best library system, the best schools, the best parks, almost the best of everything. And then all of a sudden, Montreal went by, and then Vancouver, and now even Edmonton and Calgary and Halifax and Victoria, and everybody's leaving Toronto behind. And basically, it's because there doesn't seem to be a vision in Toronto. What is the Toronto that we want? What is the kind of city that we want? And what are the things that we need to do to satisfy those needs? For example, in the issue of housing, it's very clearly that we need to build lots and lots and lots more, but there is no vision on what kind of city. So it's really chaotic. I think we need vision and we need action. When you have vision that we don't have, but you have action, you're doing a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit, so nothing coherent. You end up doing like a Frankenstein, like a monster, and nothing really sinks with anything. When you have action, that's when you have action and no vision. If you have vision and no action, then you become frustrated because you know what needs to be done, but you don't do it. But if you have vision, a shared vision and action, you can transform a city. I mean, the vision is like having the image on a puzzle. Then it doesn't matter which piece of the puzzle you're doing as long as are pieces of the same puzzle. But when you are using pieces of multiple puzzles, you do crazy things. For example, in the housing, people don't know if we should do tall buildings or short buildings, if we should densify the neighborhoods. And there are huge fights all the time because they want to put a 10-story building in the middle of a neighborhood, or because they want to do a 60-story building on an arterial. I think that we need to simplify the city planning. It's too complex. You want to do anything and you need to hire lawyers and finance and architects and whatever. I think that we need, one, on all of the arterials, I think we should be able to open up space for about 1 million homes. We won't need 1 million homes for another 50 years, but we need to open up the space now so that people are able to do. How do we do it? In all of the arterials, anywhere that you have any kind of public transit, buses or streetcars or subways, whatever, you should be able to do as a right between 5 and 9 stories. And if it's in wood structure, then you can go to 12 to incentivize people to do more wood. So that's all you need to do. So within the arterials, in between arterials, you have all houses. So say houses, you can subdivide as a right. As a right, you can subdivide in 2, 3, 4 units, and with zero fees, because sometimes the city says you can subdivide, but you gotta pay us $15,000 fee per unit. So then people don't have the money to subdivide if you gotta pay $15,000. No, zero fees. The housing crisis is huge. And if there is also a lot of older people that their children have left. So there are what people call empty nesters. Yes. So then they have a house and people want to age in place. So, but their house is too big and the expenses. But if they can subdivide their house in 3, 4, 5 units, they can live in one of those and rent out the other 4. So then all of a sudden, we're going to eliminate this restriction. We're going to eliminate the exclusionary zoning and allow people to live in the neighborhoods. And wherever we have subways, then around the subways, 200 meters around the subway, then we can do the 40, the 60-story building, but only around the subway. And with that, we could satisfy satisfy the need in the very short term. I think that we need to move very, very fast and very clear and tell people. It's very clear that most people along the arterials, they do not want 30, 40, 50-story buildings. People don't want to live there. People don't want to have them next to their houses. People would much prefer to live in 5 to 9 stories. Also, this has so many benefits. We're doing lots of 30, 40-story buildings of very poor quality. Imagine those buildings 30 years from now. Even when they are new, one of the elevators breaks down and the whole building goes in chaos.
Yes.
Imagine 30 or 40 years from now, those with bad maintenance and bad condition. What are you going to do with a 40 or 50-story building? Let's assume that you have a 6-story building in bad shape. Well, first you can fix it very inexpensive, or you just tear it down and you do another one. But when it's 60-story, it's not so easy to tear down. So also, I think that in general, when buildings are under 10 stories, they are a lot more humane. People know their neighbors. People know their surroundings. When you open the window and you hear what's going on. Also, the other thing that I'm saying, all of those buildings on arterials at the street level, it has to be commercial. It has to be commercial. That is the only way that we're going to save the main streets. If we want to save the local restaurants, local knitting areas, or yoga studios, or whatever, they gotta have 5 or 6 stories on top of them. Like we go even where we have subways for decades, like along Bloor. 80% of it is only 2 stories. 1 story for the retail on the street level and 1 on top of it. It will be impossible for them to survive in the long term. So we are going to end up only with Shoppers Drug Marts and Dollaramas and CIBCs. But instead, if you put 5 stories on top of it, then you're going to have the critical mass to have much better public transit and to have much better local retail. So that is what I think on the housing. I think that we need to do something really bold and do it as a right and not have eliminate all of the red tape, and we can have all of the housing that we need.
And I have a follow-up on that, just so that I like people to understand why are those ideas not happening now? Like why, for example, in Queen or Bloor, there are locations where you could have like taller buildings, but you simply don't see them going up, except for like a huge building, like you said, like every corner or something like that. There's like a huge tower going up, but you don't see this like small towers going up in streets like Queen, like Bloor, like you mentioned.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons is that some of the large developers have convinced the politicians that it is not financially viable if it's not 40-story building. When that's a lie. I see all over the city, in the Annex, in the Junction, in Thorncliffe, in upper income, lower income, everywhere. Magnificent buildings between 5 and 10 story going up with small and medium-sized developers that maybe they are putting more love into those buildings and more care, and they're not doing it out of charity. They are doing it because they want to make money, and they're making lots of money. So that is one of the reasons why it's not going up. 2, the city is putting too many restrictions for people, so it takes them 2-3 years to get a license. What I'm proposing is, if we have some basic guidelines and the developer wants to do it, the license should be within 30 days, such as 5 to 9 stories. The street level has to be commercial. If you want to have parking, you don't need to. But if you want, because that is very expensive and that raises the price. But if you want to have parking, it has to be either underground or on the back, nothing on the front. On the front is going to be for people. So some basic guidelines, 5-6 guidelines. If you meet those within 30 days, you have the license. And then for a developer, saving 3 years of bureaucracy, it's a lot of money. So I think that's why we are not having it. But I think that we could do it simple. The way of, for example, splitting the houses, because the fees are extremely expensive and because they are not allowing to split houses in many areas of the city. We want people to walk 2 places, but there are many. In the old Toronto, you see convenience stores and coffee shops everywhere. In the other part of the city, it's illegal. Now they are trying to legalize some, but very timid. So I think those are things that are completely doable. It doesn't cost a lot of money. And then if the city has done something but it's not working, for example, laneway houses. If you want to do laneway houses and you think you're going to get 20, 30,000, and after 3 years you only have 83, then you're going to say, there is a problem. Why don't we find out what is it? Is it bureaucracy? Is it cost? Is it the permit? Is the market? But if we have less than 100, when we were thinking that we're going to have 20,000, there must be something wrong. So I think there's a big problem in the city of management. The city is very poorly managed. There is not that capacity. I think there is many, many good people working in the city, but the top level, the general managers, the directors, the city manager, and the elected officials, I think that the mayor and city council are failing the city, are failing especially the suburbs, are failing the low income, are failing the immigrants, and are failing the city staff. So it's incredible. People now don't want to work for the city because they don't seem motivated anymore. When I came to Canada, it was impossible to work for the city of Toronto because anytime they put out a job posting, there were 800 people applying for any job posting. Everybody wanted to work for the city. Now, almost every department has more than 10% vacancy. Many departments, 15, 18% vacancy. So then also everything takes longer. Why? Because there's just too much bureaucracy. So the planning wants to do something with transportation, and then the planner needs to ask the manager, and the manager needs to ask the other manager of transportation to ask to the planner of transport. Huge bureaucracy. So by that time, it's been 2 months and nothing happens. So people say, I'd rather go and work in Mississauga, or I'd rather work in Barrie, or I want to do something else. So it's really incredible that so many good people are leaving the city, and in part of it is because it's very poorly managed. One of my priorities would be how to reignite the flame of people that work in the city. Yeah. Because the reality is that anybody that works in the public sector, at some point they went to the public sector because they wanted to create a better city, a better world. They wanted to contribute. But then after a few bad experiences, they stayed mostly just because they got good benefits, and they say, oh, I'll just stay here another 15 years and then I'll have a good pension. No. Stay there 15 years, but stay doing something good, something meaningful. So I think that is really critical.
I love it. Love that answer. And staying on the topic of housing a little bit, I know it's not the same, but in the pandemic and as we transition out of it, there's been a lot of talk about the homeless in Toronto. I was recently in Vancouver a month ago doing a show, and I went on an Uber through Hastings Street, and I was shocked. It was just like blocks and even more than a kilometer of homeless camps of homeless people on the streets. And you can't help but feel for these people. A lot of these people have mental health challenges, a lot of addiction, substance addiction. And how can we prevent this from happening in Toronto?
Yeah. Well, first, we need to realize and accept that this has to be treated as a human rights issue. And we have not been doing it. I mean, in the last 4 years, anytime there is 10, 12, 15 homeless in any place, the city council and mayor of city hall that is failing the city, we're sending 150 armed police to literally kick them out of the parks, tear down their tents and what. So what do? Then they go to another park. And then they kick him out of the other park the week after, and then they go to another park, and this is just a repetitive going over and over and over. No, we should work very close with them to move them out of the parks into a better option. Of course, ideally, it's a permanent home, but that is not going to be easy or fast or and it's going to cost a lot of money. But we could do a lot of things in between. So I think we should not kick them out. We should not be sending the police to kick them out of the parks. We should send specialized people, social workers, to talk with them and have a dialogue and find better solutions. Also, it's not that many. We got about 7,000 homeless in Toronto. Toronto is a wealthy city. It's really shameful that we don't have a better option. But again, we need to have better management. This week, I was in one of the hotels. The city has rented some hotels for homeless so that they could be isolated during COVID and so on. But I was at this hotel on Dundas in the east side. the city is paying over $8,000 per person, $8,000 per month, $8,000. The people, the homeless that are there, they want a rent subsidy, $1,600 per month. So instead of $8,000, $1,600. So we could pay 5 homeless, the rent subsidy of 5 homeless, with what we are paying 1 room. So it doesn't make any sense. And they would be much happier, and the city would be much happier, and everybody would be much happier. Why are we forcing them to be on a hotel at $8,000 per person instead of renting out their own place, whatever they want, at $1,600 per person? So that would be, so a lot of it is managerial capacity to do things right. Of course, we also need to find better places for them to go. A lot of them have mental issues, have drug issues, so it's not as easy as just kicking them around. They need to have professional treatment for mental health, for addictions. And we need to do it. I mean, this is just humane. That the reality is that it's much, much more expensive for the cities to do nothing, because then the cost of the hospitals and surgeries and operations and mental health, when they gotta be on an institutionalized. So the option of doing nothing is by far the most expensive. But then we gotta work. Part is efficiency, like the city with these hotels. When the auditor did an audit last month, they found that they were over $13 million overpaid to the hotels for people, for rooms that were empty, for meals that were not provided, and the city had no idea until the auditor checked. Why is it that it's managerial capacity? So once again, so I think the homeless is an issue that has to have a human rights approach, but also it has to have management. And I think that we could find the solutions, because it is bad for everybody, especially for the homeless. No one wants to live in a park. No one wants to live on a sidewalk. So that is not a lifestyle that anybody has chosen.
I love it. When I used to live in downtown, I went to the university where I met Alejandra, and there used to be not a lot of green areas, and it felt like they just kept reducing over the years. Diego, you know a little bit about, we had read something online about green areas being available, like by the Gardiner East, and also I think in City Place they talked about having some green areas.
Yeah, the real day.
What's your take on the Gardiner East, Diego?
Well, yeah, I wanted to ask you a question specific about that, because I know that for a lot of people, they don't understand that, like, if people are not into urbanism, they might not know why we want to tear down the Gardiner East. If to someone who doesn't understand this and just thinks that if you do that, you're just going to increase traffic on the main streets, how do you explain to them why we should tear down the Gardiner East and not do this hybrid option that Tory voted for?
Okay, let's talk about that, and then what Stephan was talking about, the rail deck park. That is a separate, but it's very interesting. The Gardiner, for the people that don't live in Toronto, basically there is an elevated highway in Toronto that it goes close to the waterfront. It borders the waterfront and is falling apart. So then there was an option to fix it, which was about $500 million. A second option was to take it down and replace with a boulevard with sidewalks and bikeways and trees and benches, and also gaining a lot of space, about 12 acres of space for housing in the area. But somehow the mayor went somewhere and came back with an idea that he calls the hybrid. And the hybrid option began at $1.5 billion. Then it went to $2 billion. That was to tear down the highway and rebuild it about 100 meters to the north. So instead of $500 million, it's almost $2 billion. By the way, the mayor says that is going to save 3 minutes to 2% of the commuters. 2%. Imagine that the mayor and the city council had gone to anybody's house and knocked on the door and then said, "Oh, hello, I need $700. I said, "Oh, why do you need $700? "Oh, because I want to save 3 minutes to 2% of the commuters." "Oh, I see your spouse. I need another 700. "Oh, and I see a little kid. So I need 700 from each. I need 2,100 from each from this household." Who in their right mind would have accepted to give $2,100 per household so that 2% of the commuters would save 3 minutes? So from the financial point of view, this is totally crazy. I mean, to put things into context, Toronto does a 10-year capital budget on everything. This is half, 45%, almost half of the capital budget of transportation for 10 years of Toronto. No. So when we say we don't have money for sidewalks or for bikeways or for potholes or new roads, it's because 45% is going into one single project that on top of it, it's a worse project. So, I mean, even if the cost was the same, ideally, the boulevard would be ideal because we open up 12 acres for housing. We also eliminate a barrier separating the city with the waterfront. So even at same cost. But when you think it's going to cost 3 or 4 times more, and on top of it is not going to be a solution for anything. And those are the kind of things that the mayor has been doing. And like now he says he wants more power. Power for what? He has won every single voting council, everything. In the last 8 years, there has not been one single issue that he has lost. So he has enough power to either eliminate any idea from someone that he doesn't like, or to get his ideas approved even when they're really, really bad, such as the Gardiner. So that is the thing. It's bad for mobility, it's bad for public space, and it's terrible from the financial point of view. It's terrible for the citizens. And what I'm amazed is that there is not enough citizen leaders, civic leaders like presidents of universities or members of the Board of Trade and others that would stand up to these kind of decisions that make no sense. I mean, I don't mind if the mayor and council make a bad decision doing a playground of $100,000, but when you are talking about $2 billion, it's a lot of money. I mean, it's $700 per every man, woman, and child in the city.
So the fear would be a lot of people who take the Gardiner and the DVP like complaining that there would be more traffic, or like what was the main reason that they didn't?
Yeah, the mayor got pushed by the councillors of the suburbs that the people in the suburbs were going to be upset because they would lose 3 minutes by doing part of it on a boulevard, which is totally crazy. I mean, that is what I'm saying about the vision. Is no vision. Putting all of this money for 2% of the people that are in cars. This is not a war on the car. No, I think that the people that have a car would gladly spend a little bit more time. By the way, 98% of the people will not even use it because they are not commuters. It's only 2% of those commuters coming from the northeast that would be affected. And even those 2% would understand that by not saving 3 minutes, they are saving themselves $700 per man, woman, and child. I mean, this is really. I mean, you were asking about the homeless. We need to do homes. We have over 100,000 people in wait list, not of homeless, but 100,000 people for affordable housing. Wow. We are not building affordable housing because we don't have money, and we are spending these $2 billion that could have been spent in affordable housing. For example, in the last 8 years, we've been doing a lot of housing in publicly owned land. Initially, it was all market rate housing. Why are we doing market rate in land that belongs to us? That doesn't make any sense. If there is land that belongs to the citizens, let's focus 100% in affordable or deep affordable, because that is the place where we can really break down the price and call a developer and say, hey, developer, look, let's do this together. We own the land. then you do the building, and then we'll rent it out or sell it for deep affordable or for affordable rates. And then for the market rate, let's create incentives for the developers in private properties. But then we have the money. So when people say, oh, where is the money? It's not a money issue. I mean, we have the money and things like that. I mean, also, you were talking about green spaces. We need many, many more green spaces. During COVID, we told people, please go out, but be physically separated. Well, some people didn't have the parks within walking distance to be physically separated. And then now they're saying, oh, but what if the city had done the rail deck park? Well, once again, there is lack of management. All of a sudden,
Which one is the red?
The rail deck park. The rail deck park basically is that along the rails of the commuting trains and other trains into the city, some people want to cover the rails and do a building. Basically, someone took the mayor to Chicago to see Millennium Park, and they said, "Oh my God, we should do something like Millennium Park." Well, first, I don't think that was the best idea of Chicago, because when you go to Chicago, half of Chicago is as dangerous almost as Syria. The children, 40% of those children need to be escorted to school because there are so many gangs. Other parts of Chicago is as civilized and safe as Switzerland. So we also gotta pay attention if they should have invested so much money in the park. Part of it was private, part of it was public. In the case of Rail Deck Park, it's not that big. It's only 20 acres, which is not that much. And the city, when anybody does a building, they need to leave some money for parks. So the city has saved some money. So then the mayor thought that it would be good to do the rail deck park, that it would cost about $1.5 billion. $1.5 billion. Assume, I asked the listeners, we got $1.5 billion. What can we do with $1.5 billion? Well, we could do one park in the downtown. Or we could put 1 million into 1,500 parks. Or we could put 10 million into 150 parks. So there are many, many options of what to do. So should we invest all of it in one park? But I was telling you about the lack of capacity managerial. They start talking and they start doing all of these drawings without even finding out that the city that did not own the air rights. There are some air rights that once you have a property, you have property on land on the first floor, but you also have air rights above that. So in the case of the rail, the owners of the rail had already sold the air rights to a private developer. No. So then they said, oh, so they spent months and months talking about the rail deck park and doing the signs and blah, blah, without even knowing that it was already sold. It wasn't the city. And then they said, oh, but we could expropriate. What? Why are we going to expropriate? That's a dumb idea. I mean, this is 20 acres. The developer has to give around 4 or 5 acres as park. I'd rather have a 4-acre park done by the developer and still have the 1.5 billion in the pocket to do parks all over the city than have a 20-acre park but having spent all the savings that we have had over many years that we have ready to do parks. So those are the kind of things that doesn't make any sense. The other thing is this, the streets. One of my plans is to turn gray into green. When in not only Toronto, but almost all of the cities, between 25 and 30% of the area are streets. A lot of those areas could be turned into parks. So we don't need to expropriate in the rail deck park. We could do so many better parks. Like when people propose, let's do it on University Avenue, and the mayor said no. For the last 3 years, he's been saying no. But then now someone said, Mayor, that might be a good election issue. So he said, oh, maybe we'll do it. But zero budget, no money. I think we should do it. And in many places, cities like Melbourne has created 80 hectares of green space where they used to have gray. So there's a lot of small corners, like, you know, when there is snows here and we see that some roads are too wide and there's leftover space, well, we could turn a lot of those into small pocket parks, or we could do big parks. I mean, even I would ask the citizens, when we are going to repave a small neighborhood road, we should ask the citizens on that neighborhood, we're going to redo this. We do this maybe every 30 years, we're going to repave your street. Do you want it 100% pavement? Or do you want maybe one side, half of it paved, and the other half as green space? All of a sudden, imagine having a linear park in front of your house. The cost for the city is even less to do half of it as green space and half of it as pavement. We need to also, this is for climate change, we need to turn a lot of the pavement, a lot of gray into green, and this is completely doable. So I think those are the things but we need to have a vision. We need to have a small team of people dedicated 24/7 to finding possibilities of gray areas that can be turned into green, into parks. Trees, we gotta plant trees all over the city.
On that topic of climate change, what can we do in the short to medium term, not just as Gil Penalosa as mayor, but as normal citizens of Toronto to combat it? I mean, should we vote on, obviously we should vote on these topics, but what would you do in the short to medium term to combat climate change?
Well, I think there is nothing as important in the greater Toronto area than stopping sprawl. We need to stop sprawl immediately.
What is stopping sprawl?
Sprawl is when the developers and the municipalities keep paving over new agricultural land. Toronto, the greater Toronto area, has some of the best agricultural land in the world around the city. But every year we're eating up more and more of this agricultural land to do single homes. Those single homes will never be sustainable. So they will always have to be subsidized. And so we need to stop. We need to say, okay, all of the new population, we have to accommodate every one of the new population in the existing footprint. So there is nothing as important for climate change as to stop any building in new land. So the whatever is not built has to be used for agriculture, not for building. So that's by far the most important. Also, so for that we need to densify. So when I was talking about densifying the arterials, that's where we need to have that instead of growing out, further out, we need to densify the arterials. And not only us, hopefully Mississauga and Brampton and Markham and everybody start also densifying their arterials.
What is for those of you who are not award-winning urbanists like me and Gil, what is arterials?
Well, any big road, any road that are connecting different areas of the city. So any area where you have public transit, or you could have either buses or streetcars, so I think that is really critical. So why do we need to densify? Because think, if you have on a few buildings 200 apartments, imagine instead of those 200 apartments distributed in 200 houses, the amount of pavement that you need for the roads to get to those 200 houses, the amount of concrete that you need for the sidewalks, to take all the pipelines for the water, for the sewage, for the electricity, for everything, and then to maintain all of that. So the impact on climate change is gigantic. So we need to change some of this. We need to change from mobility. We need to walk more. We need to ride bicycles. We need to improve public transit. We need also to change cars. For example, one of the things during the pandemic is that a lot of people working from home said, wow, it would be nice to work from home if we could walk to the basic things. So I want to be promoting the 15-minute Toronto, the 15-minute city. And actually for the Hispanics, the person that is leading around the world the 15-minute city is a Colombian. It's Carlos Moreno, who's the right-hand person of the mayor of Paris, of Anne Hidalgo, who created the 15-minute city. The 15-minute city is a simple concept. It's what if everything that we did, that we need on a daily basis, the grocery store, the restaurant, the corner shop, the coffee place, the park, the library, the school, are within a 15-minute walk. And this can be done, this can be doable, but again, we need a little bit of density. If we don't have density, we're not going to be able to have things to walk to. We're not going to be able to have public transit. But of course we could. For example, also, something that helps for climate change, but also for traffic. I see that here in your studio, you have a wonderful book on why we sleep. It's very, very important for people to sleep. Everybody needs to sleep 7 or 8 hours. But some people are morning person and some people are evening person, night persons.
Night owls.
So what I'm going to propose that starting with City Hall, and inviting as many public sector as possible to have flexible hours so that we could work, let's say, from 10:30 to 2:30. Everybody has to work 10:30 to 2:30. But if you are a morning person and you want to arrive at 7 a.m. and leave at 2:30, that's fine. But if you are not a morning person and you want to arrive at 10:30 and then leave at 7 p.m., that will be fine. That has a huge impact on many things. One, people are going to be more productive.
I love it.
Because the morning persons are going to be able to work in the morning. The evening persons are going to work in the... But also the peak hour, the traffic jams. Instead of having everybody within a 90-minute window, now you're going to dilute that 90 minutes into 180 minutes. So there's going to be less people crowding the subways, crowding the streets. So even the people that have cars, instead of all of the cars going in because everybody has to go in at 8:30 in the morning, no, some people are going to go in at 7 or 6:30, and some people at 9, others at 10, others at 10:30. So that traffic jam of cars is also going to be a lot less. This is completely doable. And also we can even do it as a pilot. Let's do it for a year. If it works, we make it indefinite. If it doesn't work, then we go back on it. But those are the kind of things that improve. Also, if we could walk to places that are also good for climate change. So as some of all of these things, also the houses, we need to promote within the houses. When I said we are going to densify the big streets that are in between houses, that might be every 10 blocks or whatever, the houses in between, we need to promote that they plant trees, that they put solar panels for energy, so that they also will contribute to having a better climate change facilities.
You were talking about density, and one of the things that I always keep hearing from municipal politicians, not only in the city but everywhere else, is about the issue of NIMBYism, right? Like, not in my backyard. How do you prevent that issue from becoming the stopgap, I guess, between the vision and the action?
Well, first, because we need to have some very simple and clear rules. If we have rules that everybody understands, then it's going to be a lot easier to obey and also to enforce. When I'm saying on the arterials, and we're going to have only 5 to 9, or if it's wood, 5 to 12 stories, the NIMBYs, almost all of them agree with that. They don't want a 20-story, a 40-story, a 60-story building next to their houses. So we're not going to put one single 40-story building next to their houses. Also, in between the two big roads where we are going to have these 5 to 9 stories, those houses, we're going to leave them as house. Or if someone wants to do something new, they can do it, but 3 stories high. So they can do 3 stories, and they can change one house for 6 or 8 units as long as it's not more than 3 stories high. So I think that almost all of the NIMBYs agree with that. I mean, there's a little bit of few extremes on both sides. A few extremes that say, oh, that's not enough, we should do 20 stories in the middle of a neighborhood. Or others, the opposite, that say, oh, no, 3 stories is too much, we should do only 1 story. Or I don't want them to split because we lose the character. No, we will not do 20-story buildings in the middle of a neighborhood. And also, we will not do just one. No, but if we allow people to do up to 3 stories, multiple units, if they want to do 3, 4, 5, 6 in a big lot, of course they should be able to, as long as it doesn't go above 3 stories. But then, when the rules are not clear, and when the rules are done case by case, then it becomes a huge fight. And then there's a huge opposition of NIMBYs and YIMBYs, and some people want everything, other people want nothing. I call them, that is a big problem. We start doing citizen engagement, and the cave people show up. Who are the cave people? It's what I call the citizens against virtually everything. Yeah. But we need to fight those. We need to fight those because we do need the density. I mean, Toronto's going to have 1 million more people in the next 25 years. The GTA has 5 million. We're going to go to 7.5 million. So the GTA is going to have 2.5 million. So we need to densify. We cannot continue moving out indefinitely because that is the worst that could happen for climate change. So we need to find some guidelines. I really think that almost all of the people that have been opposing these case-by-case 20-story buildings would love to have 5 to 9 only on the roads with public transit, as long as between rows in those houses, we would allow only 3 stories, but also as a right. So that would not be up to discussion. We would not be having all of these public meetings to see if it's 3 or 2 or 1. No, as a right, people can have 3 stories. Oh, but I don't want it to have 3 stories. No, sorry, people as a right, they can have 3 stories, because we need to eliminate that exclusionary zoning. We need to allow more people into those neighborhoods. By the way, those neighborhoods, they have, people sometimes they forget that those neighborhoods have become so expensive that almost everybody who lives in the neighborhoods, by the way, for people that are not from Toronto, 80% of Toronto, 80% of the area of Toronto is for single family housing. This is totally nuts. For when we think about climate change or equity, having 80% of the area, why do they want to keep it like that? Because they don't want people of other races, they don't want people of other ethnicities, they don't want people of other incomes, and that is horrible. So this is a city that we are so proud that we're the most multicultural, but we do not want to allow them. And this is a huge crisis. Last Sunday I was running and I went by a fire station and the firefighters were cleaning the trucks. And I started talking with them, and I said, "Hey guys, where do you live?" I told them, I said, October 24th, say, "Sorry, Tori, Gil is in, and vote for me." And they said, "Oh, but we don't live in Toronto." I said, "Where do you live?" So 2 of them lived in Brampton, 1 of them lives in Mississauga. This is not a symptom of a good city when our teachers, our nurses, our firefighters, and these are people that earn good. They got good salaries and good pensions, but still, these people cannot afford to live in Toronto. So that is not something good for the city. I mean, and most of the people that live in this 80% of single-family housing, it has become so expensive that they themselves would not be able to live in that house if they had not bought it 10, 20, 30 years ago. So that doesn't make absolutely... Their children will not be able to live in the city because they cannot afford it. So it really, we need to be generous, and we need to be open-minded that this is a fact. People say, "Oh, but we don't want more people." No, that's not a city issue. That's a federal issue. The federal government decides how many people. And the federal government says we're going to have about 400,000 immigrants every year. And of those 400,000, almost 180,000 want to live in Toronto, or in the GTA. So we are going to continue to grow. And besides, this is good for everybody. In that 80%, we, all Torontonians, we have built parks, we have built schools, we have put the sewage and the water and the hydro and everything. I mean, we have done all of that. So instead of having one family living in one house, if they want to split it in 4, that's fantastic for us because we already did the investment on the roads. So everybody who paid that, everybody paid that infrastructure. So we need to allow, and I think that would be really, really good. But so we need to realize that there will be few on each stream, but we cannot have that exclusionary zoning. We need to end with that exclusionary zoning because that is bad in every way.
So it sounds like on the pricing that is unaffordable these days, the demand is inevitable because we're going to have new people coming into Toronto, but on the supply side is where we could densify and make these changes so that that will balance the price and it won't be skyrocketing like it has been for the last 10 years. Where, I was able to buy an apartment. You're in it right now. This is the Stephan Dyer Studios. Yeah. This is actually $10 billion right here. No, 10 billion pesos maybe. But a lot of our friends, we've been here for 12, 15 years. A lot of our friends who just came, they can't afford anything.
Yeah.
So it's very tough. A lot of people may say when they see your name on the ballot, "Who is this Gil Penalosa? What does he know about Toronto? He's from Colombia." But really, you've been here for 23 years and counting. Your daughters have been here as well, studied and worked. And what would you say to those people, apart from your extraordinary resume? Why are you the guy?
Well, for many reasons. One is because I think that, for example, when you talk about parks, what do I do in my leisure time? I go to the public parks. The current mayor does not. He spends his leisure time in his cottages in Florida and in the northern part of the city, not in the public parks. I walk, I bike, I take public transit, and when I need, I also take cars. And also because I'm committed to, as part of what I want to do, is to create a city that is more equitable, that is more sustainable. I mean, you mentioned my daughter. She's a really good example. She graduated from the University of Toronto. She has a master's from a university in Barcelona. But nevertheless, she came with her family to live in Toronto. She married a Colombian, and then they came to live in Toronto. But they came with an issue that most young people have.
Yes.
They could not afford rent in Toronto. They could not even less afford to purchase a place to live in Toronto. And then in the case of her husband, as an immigrant, well, she, not her because she is practically Canadian, but her husband as an immigrant was very, very hard to find jobs because there is a lot of restriction. He has done a lot of construction and development in Colombia, but he couldn't find work here doing the same kind of work that he was doing. So then they went back to Colombia. And there is many people that young people like that are valuable, that are going back to their countries or are moving to Montreal or to Hamilton or somewhere else, but young people are not able to stay in Toronto because of these issues.
Yes.
So I totally agree with you. I mean, the reality is that in the long term, the only solution for housing is to build much, much, much more. But then we need to decide where and how. People need to understand that you can get exactly the same density if you do 5 stories next to each other, like almost all of the streets in Paris, for example, or in Copenhagen or in Barcelona, as if you do a 40-story building every other block. The big difference is that most people enjoy a 5-story. I mean, imagine life in a 5-story. Many times you're going to take the stairs. You're not even going to take the elevator. When you meet someone in the stairs and there's a neighbor coming up with 3 or 4 bags from the grocery store, you say, oh, no, I help you up, and you help people up. Or you meet someone on the stairs and you talk and you chat and you socialize.
Community.
Community. People get to know each other on a 5-story building. People don't get to know each other on a 20 or 30 or 40-story buildings. So there's a lot of advantages of that. So we need to decide, how are we going to do it? Are we going to allow 80% of the area as single-family housing, or are we going to allow people as a right to subdivide and to split? So those are the things, because the reality is that we are going to increase by 2.5 million people the greater Toronto area, and a big chunk of that is going to be in Toronto. And then it's very complicated. Also because a lot of illegal things start happening. All of a sudden you start seeing that in houses that have been built for 4 people and maybe have 2 washrooms, they got 16 people living there. There are many students, again, the young people, there are many students of any of the universities that are living in one of these houses with only 2 washrooms. Why don't they complain? Because it's illegal. So if they complain, they're going to be kicked out. Okay, the owner might be fined, but they are going to be on the street. If we legalize that and we say, oh, look, if you want to have, for every 3 people, you got to have 1 washroom. For every so many, you got to have so many areas. Then if people don't find that the regulations are being met, they're going to complain because now it's legal. So you legalize those that is becoming illegal, and it's really, really bad. I mean, there's a lot of things that are common sense. You're talking about young people. I see a lot of young people that go to the parks. They want to have a picnic with their friends. So they go and get bread and ham and cheese and whatever, and then they bring a bottle of wine and they hide it. Why? Because in Toronto, they give you a $750 ticket if you drink wine or beer.
We've done that so many times.
But you know, that this is a symptom. What bothers me that is a symptom. I know that 0.1% are not going to behave, but the other 99.9 are going to behave. So why do we punish the 99.9 that will behave just to try to have that 0.1 not behave? No, let's focus all our effort in that 0.1 to make sure that they do behave, or if they don't behave, that they get punished. but then we only need to punish you that 0.1%. But let's not bother the other 99%. These are the kind of things that is just a symptom. I mean, in June, the mayor did a press conference in June saying, because it was very hot, and saying, oh, please, people, don't worry. I know 45%, almost half of the water fountains are not working, but they will be working within 30 days. What? In June, he's telling people? And then, of course, a lot of people complain. So he called another press conference 3 days later, and he said, oh, I have asked parks that next year, the water fountains, to try to have them a little bit earlier. What? It took 8 years to realize that the water fountains are not working? I mean, that's what happens when you don't use public parks.
And I think it would be important to mention the issue that is always in the top of mind of every Torontonian, which is transit. I've myself worked in a couple of these projects, and one of the typical comments that I get from friends and people who are not in the industry and don't know much about it is like, why is it so difficult for Torontonians to build transit? Why can't we like have many subways or like efficient transit? Every project gets changed. Every time a new mayor gets elected, there's a new project that comes up. And in the end, we build nothing. So in the past 12 years that I've been here, only one subway system has been inaugurated. What can we do to improve that? What is your plan with regards to transit?
Well, first, we need to do things that make sense. For example, we got some fantastic universities. There was a plan for Scarborough. In Scarborough, there were two options. Either do a one-stop subway or to do a 21-stop light rail. The difference, basically, the light rail is with a train that goes a little bit slower, which is not really sustained much when you count the time that it takes on the subway for you to walk downstairs and go to the train, as opposed to the LRT, the light rail that you have it right on the street. But it's incredible. The light rail was going to cost $2.4 billion. The subway is like $7 billion. But it's hard for people to understand that there is not one single study comparing both options. Not one. It was 100% an emotional decision that we had a mayor 9 years ago said subways, and then the current mayor 8 years ago, he went along with the same thing without any comparison. So the reality is that now it's under construction, and now 13% of the people of Scarborough are going to have public transit, but 87% are not. 87% are not, because it was going to be one stop, now it's going to be a 3-stop subway. But only 13% of the people that live in Scarborough have access to that subway. The other one was going to provide public transit to, for example, what would I do? I would call our universities and say, hey, why don't the three of you work together, York, the Metropolitan U, and U of T. We need a team with sociologists, psychologists, finance people, legal people, whatever. We need 100 days of recommendation. Evaluate these two or any other option. So we got $7 billion. What would you do? And then they would tell us what is the best decision. Same thing with the Gardiner. With the Gardiner, we should have said, okay, we need this. By the way, the Gardiner, what the city staff proposed was the boulevard. What Waterfront Toronto proposed was the boulevard. And then the mayor and the councillors on the north side, then they changed. And then the city staff, under pressure, they said, oh, we'll do whatever council wants. So now we're not supporting any. But initially they were. So let's use the universities. We don't even have to pay expensive consultants for this on these cases. So I think, for example, now we are doing with the province, a light rail along Eglinton. It was always designed that only a little bit in the downtown was going to be underground, the rest is going to be above ground. That is a lot cheaper. Well, this premier is saying that now Eglinton West should go underground, and it's going to cost $2.4 billion more. $2.4 billion. Same train, same speed, fewer stations.
Politically, that's...
How can you accept that? Is totally... People think that money is coming from heaven or something. People don't seem to realize that this is taxes.
But it's easier for him to make that case because a lot of people associate LRTs, and I know like it's not that way, but a lot of people associate LRTs with streetcars, and unfortunately here streetcars are not very efficient. And so when you say subways, people tend to support that idea more than when you say an LRT. So how do you explain that, and what's the difference between like a light rail like the one on Eglinton that's getting built right now and like a streetcar like the one that we have on Queen?
Well, Stephan here, he's a world expert in communication. Sometimes he uses as a comedian, but the comedians are magnificent communicators. This is an issue of communication. We gotta be able to explain to people, even with a small model, that what they are doing is exactly the same train. It's not a different train, it's the same train. It's the same speed, everything the same, except that one option is to go underground and the other one above ground. But it's the same train. And underground is one fewer station. And so we could ask people, even show a video. Let's have a video underground and a video above ground, and let's ask people, if you could have the same speed, same train, but one above ground looking at trees and the sky and people and the retail, or underground everything black, which one would you prefer? I think that 9 out of 10 people would prefer above ground, and maybe 9 out of 10 rats would prefer underground.
Because I had no idea the difference.
Because this is going to be the same train. So let's do a simulation of what would be the trip for you from for 1 kilometer or 2 kilometers. What would it be? Put it on a drone and put it at the speed, at the height of the train above ground, and then simulate underground and ask people, because then people are starting to think exactly what you said. Oh, if it's underground, it's going to be faster. No, it's not going to be faster. It's going to be just as fast. It's going to be different train. No, it's going to be the same train. But how to get in? Actually, it's going to be a lot longer, because you need to walk down and walk. But also, we're talking about climate change. When it's underground, it has a huge cost of climate change, because you need to use a lot of concrete to build the underground tunnels. So from the point of view of climate change, doing underground is terrible. The other thing is that Eglinton in the west side is gigantic. I mean, you can fit 4 of those trains and without taking one single lane of cars. So, I mean, there's all of this space. What I'm saying is that most of the people in the same area, in Etobicoke, they lack good public transit. So what if we told the people of Etobicoke, you have 2 options: have this train underground and nothing else, or have this train above ground, and with these 2.4 billion, let's have these 4 lines of LRT connecting the same Etobicoke. It's not taking the money to another part of the province. No, it's not saying this money is going to go to Windsor, or it's going, no. Same 2.4 billion that the Premier is committing to Scarborough where he lives. Instead of doing it in one train, let's do the same train plus 4 LRT lines.
I love it. Well, the end, we're coming towards the end of this podcast that changes lives. Why not? And we have a rapid fire.
It's very important. Yeah, let's do the rapid fire. But before that, I think when you say changing lines, it's really important that people understand, because this is about how we live. It's funny that people in Canada vote more in the federal elections, the national elections, when the things are not really close to you. Is what are we going to do with the foreign policy? What are we going to do with international trade? And the impact is really diluted on your everyday life. Instead, at the municipal level, is if they plow your sidewalk or not, if they do programs for kids or for older adults in your park, what kind of public transit are you having? I mean, the garbage, how is it being picked up? If the water fountains work, if the washrooms is okay that they are 8 months of the year are closed. I mean, the municipal level really hits with your daily life. So I think that's where maybe we should, I hope that people will think about that, and maybe on October 24th, and if you don't live in Toronto but have friends in Toronto, please give them a call. Tell them October 24th, sorry Tori, Gil is in.
I love it. I love the catchphrase. Okay, the whole idea of the rapid fire is I say something and you answer the quickest that you can. You could take a few seconds if you want to think about it, but the whole idea is spontaneity. I lose track of time when
When I'm running, I love to run.
Oh yeah, me too. Do you do half marathons?
Yeah, I usually not marathons anymore. I did New York and Vancouver, but now I do about 4 halves per year. This year I
Nice.
did New York, and
What was your time in New York?
well, not that good. But I always beat half of the people. So I said, as long as I beat half of the people, so I said I beat over 20,000 people in New York. but 17,000 beat me. I love the 10Ks. I love the 10Ks and the half marathon. The only thing bad is the name. It's a stupid name. You tell people, what were you? Oh, I did a half marathon. They say, oh, what happened? Why didn't you do the full? But when you tell them I did 21K, they say, wow, 21. That sounds like a lot.
Yes.
So we need to find a better name for the half marathons.
That's part of your policy. We're gonna change the name of the half marathons forever.
Yeah.
Okay, what have you done in the past 3 months that makes you feel proud?
Made the decision to run for mayor.
That's huge. I love it. If you could invite 3 people for dinner, alive or dead, to your home, who would you invite?
Oh,
Could be anyone. Celebrities, athletes, politicians, urbanists, architects, family.
well, I would love to invite a homeless person to because I always learn a lot when they're sharing the stories. I also would love, I think the Pope is really an amazing person that almost came from nothing from Argentina and has become, I think that, I wish he had been elected the term before when he was younger, and maybe he would have been bolder. In sports, I see so many environmentalists that are amazing and so many people in social justice that it's...
So who would be your third? Stephan Dyer?
Stephan Dyer.
Okay, and this one I'm really interested. If you could study with any expert in the world, who would you study with?
Oh, there are many. I would like to study with people that actually get things done.
I love it.
Because not people that talk, because everybody talks, but few get done. I mean, people like Janet Sari-Khan, who was Commissioner of Transportation in New York. She was a doer. So she was fantastic. And
She's a big fan of the podcast.
Yeah.
She's gonna listen to this.
I think that people that get things done, we have too many talkers and very few doers. So I'm a fan of the doers on any topic, on any area.
I love it. Impatience with action, patience with results. Okay, I love it. What book have you recommended most to others? Apart from all your incredible TED Talks and keynotes and articles.
Well, some of the books that you have here, I recommend, like Why We Sleep, because I think that sleep is absolutely critical for the well-being of people. I think the well-being is important. I also recommend books on nutrition. I think we need to eat more green base.
Yes.
I also like to recommend books on socializing. I think that we have a pandemic of isolation, of loneliness. So we need to socialize in the sidewalk, in the park. We need to, the city has to actually promote that. I like to recommend books on nature, because we gotta have nature everywhere, at home, on the sidewalk, on the school, on the place of work. And also I like to recommend books on physical activity, because the magic pill is called physical activity.
Yes.
If we do 30 minutes, not marathon, just 30 minutes a day, maybe 15 in the morning, 15 in the afternoon, all of a sudden that's gonna be good for osteoporosis, for depression, for anxiety, for heart attacks,
Yes.
for strokes, almost for everything. So books around those topics, I like to recommend.
If you were gonna get lost in an island for years and you could only take one book with you, which book would that be?
Well, it couldn't be really Cities for People by Yangel, because that would be, although it's a magnificent book that I recommend to everybody. Maybe I would take it. Yes, yeah, Cities for People by Yangel, the Danish urbanist. Maybe I would have time to dream.
Nice. Okay, I love it. What are 2 to 3 things you've always wanted to do that are still on your bucket list? Apart from being on the Stephan Dyer podcast.
No, I love to travel. I have worked in over 350 cities, and I have never, ever left a city wishing I had not gone. So, but there's a lot of places that I still have never been, and everywhere I go, anywhere, I learn so much. I would love to go to more places in Africa. I think that that would be really amazing. I think that so there are a lot of things about traveling. Yeah, I think that I would on my bucket list to go places whenever my kids have grandchildren, and with all of them, and they're big enough to be healthy, to do something with them.
Nice.
I think that's some of the things that.
When you hear of the word successful, who is the first person that comes to mind?
Oh, people that are doing what they love doing. I meet some people working in restaurants. They love food. I think people are good when they are doing what they love doing. So sometimes it's the chef of a restaurant. Sometimes it's a comedian. Sometimes it's a politician. But whatever you do, I think people need to be passionate. I do think that people gotta have grit. That is passion and perseverance. I think that if you got passion and perseverance, you will be successful.
You're invincible,
in anything.
Unbreakable, unmistakable, like Diego Hidalgo and Gil Penalosa and Stephan Dyer. Okay, here we go. 2 more questions to finish it off, my friends. This is kind of a weird one, but one of my favorite questions. If you had 6 months left to live, how would you spend them?
Well, I would spend more time with my family, but other than that, pretty much doing what I continue doing. I think that sometimes people say, "Oh, what would you do if you win the lottery?" I said, "I would do exactly the same thing that I'm doing. I love what I do, and I love being with people. And so, if I had 6 months, I think that I would maybe slow down a little bit on the activity of advising cities and things, and spend more time with the family, but not completely ending one or the other."
I love it. I ask that question a lot, and I think it's a really good symptom. A lot of people that have been on the podcast, they say nothing. I would be doing the same things, spend a little more time with my family, but it's always most of the people that I interview, they say I would be doing the same exact thing, and I find that that's why these conversations are important, especially with what you plan to do with the city, because there are a lot of people that do what they hate because it's the only way to afford living in the city.
Exactly. I think that is really, really horrible. When someone spends 10, 20, 30 years of their life,
Yes.
5 days a week doing something that they hate, because they can afford a house, or because they're going to get a good pension, or because of whatever. My God, life is way too short. I mean, when I came to Canada and I did my Canadian experience working for the city of Mississauga, at some point I decided to leave and create an NGO that is called 880 Cities.
Yes.
And some people said, "Gil, but are you crazy? Over 300 people applied for your job, and you are leaving?" And I said, yes. I said, I'm not motivated a lot. I cannot even dream or think for a minute that in the next 20, 25 years, I'm going to just come here at 9 a.m., leave at 5 p.m., just because I have stability, just because I have a job, just because I'm going to have a good pension. And well, now I know that the people that were with me are getting the good pension. But nevertheless, that's not what I wanted. I think that everybody really, life is so short that you don't really know if you're going to live 6 more months or 6 more years or longer. So I think we should try to do, as long as it's possible, things that we are passionate about, because we need to have perseverance, and perseverance means that sometimes things are going to be easy, but sometimes things are going to be hard, and you need to persevere and continue.
Yes.
But I do know lots of people that do that. And we should try to find other options. And when I said the 880 cities, I think that's interesting because I created an NGO that has a simple but powerful concept when we are talking about cities. What if everything that we did in our cities, the sidewalk, the crosswalk, the subway, the park, the library, the restaurant, everything, public, private, had to be great for an 8-year-old and for an 80, not 8 to 80, 8 and 80 as an indicator. Well, then it would be good for everybody from 0 to over 100. We need to stop building our cities as if everybody was 30-year-old and athletic and build cities for everyone. That's what the 80, and that's why also I want to be a mayor, is to try to build a Toronto that is good for everyone.
I love it. I love it. That's so powerful. I agree. I think you can escape competition through authenticity by pursuing those things that you love the most, and as a result, you're going to get better. At the same time, I want to acknowledge those people who are newcomers and immigrants like us 10, 15 years ago, where there are stages, and maybe you will have to work that Tim Hortons job at the beginning, or maybe if you're an engineer, you're going to have to clean floors at the beginning, and I know it sucks, and it shouldn't be like that. But
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
When I worked in Mississauga, I had come from being the commissioner of an entity of a city, working directly with the mayor at the time, and all of a sudden I came to a position, a business analyst in a cubicle that didn't even have a window in the middle of nowhere for a very tiny salary. And I said, well, I had to eat that frog and be there for a while. So I think, but also that's why I also think that first we need to facilitate that the immigrants, when they arrive, they can get better jobs.
Yes.
But also that even if they are the Tim Hortons, we need to make sure that when they are there for 8 hours and they leave that and they go to a park, that the washrooms are open. When they take the subway and they have a little kid on a stroller, that the escalators are working.
Yes.
We gotta make sure that everything that is public is of better quality, so that whenever those 8 hours are not, it's important. We need to help people do better use of their leisure time. I mean, it's very, very scarce, the leisure time.
Yes.
I mean, people are sleeping 8 hours and they're working another 8 hours, so that's 16. And they are cooking and eating and doing things for maybe another 4 hours. So then all of a sudden it's 20.
yes.
So the time that is variable, that you have either to commute, or to be with your children, or to be with your spouse, or whoever you want to be, or with yourself running or doing the activities, it's only 3 or 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
So if we don't improve like the commute time, and people spend 3 of those 4 hours, then they're going to have only 1 hour left. So that's why we need to see how to improve that commute, how to have the 15-minute Toronto, so that people can actually walk into the different places.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be very hard it's bad for your health if you take away from the 8 hours sleeping. You're not going to be able to do well in job if you take away from the 8 hours that you
Absolutely.
need to work. So the leisure time, that's why we need to do absolutely priority to the leisure time, because it's very short and very precious. So it has to be good quality.
And sometimes if your job, those 8 hours aren't going well because you're doing a survival job that you didn't study for back home, and your previous experience is not being valued here, you're making the decision to stay in Canada and assessing your enjoyment of Canada only based on that 1 hour of leisure. And because you're miserable because the other stuff isn't working, then you say that everything is horrible and maybe you're going to have to go back, and it's not what we want for the newcomers. So
Exactly. I meet so many newcomers that have given up.
Yeah.
And they say, okay, now I don't care. I'll do the Tim Hortons and I don't care. But I want good quality for my children. But what I'm concerned is that my children are also not having the good quality. The other day I was in Scarborough with some women in the food bank. And they were telling me, I said, okay, if I was mayor, what do you want me to do? And I was so surprised because they said, the number one thing is safe streets. We are very, very afraid that when our children walk or bike to the park or walk or bike to school, that they're going to be killed. Because in the suburbs has the highest death of people walking or cycling in the city.
Wow.
And they were very, very... So I want those people that have almost given up first, hopefully, they won't have to stay doing what they don't like forever. But that even if they are doing that survival job and gave up, but are hoping for a better life for the children, that the children do have a better life. I was in Malvern with a woman in her early 40s, and she said, I'm having 3 jobs. And I have 2 kids, and her kid was playing baseball. And she said, I gotta pay $400 for my kid to play baseball. And then I go to the city and I said, I need a subsidy. They said, no, because you earn too much money. I said, I earn too much money because I have 3 jobs. But if I don't have 3 jobs, I cannot pay the baseball for my kid. So then it becomes a catch-22. Why does this woman have to have 3 jobs so that her kid can play baseball on a regular league? It's insane that we don't have enough recreational programs for all kids. And also, we have many, many more recreational programs in the wealthy areas, especially in the downtown, than in the suburbs. So those are the kind of things that is totally fixable. I mean, we cannot be investing the millions in doing the facilities and not investing the cents in making them work. It has to be hardware and software. The infrastructure doesn't work without the programs. So we gotta work on uses and programs.
I love it. Gil, the last question of the podcast is called the champagne question. Every guest gets this question, including Diego in episode 12 if you want to listen to it. I have a suspicion of what you're going to say, but here it goes. If we were to meet a year from now with a bottle of champagne, what are we celebrating in Gil Penalosa's life?
Well, that I'm being able to make the city of Toronto more equitable and more sustainable. Not that I'm mayor, because most people want to be mayor. I think like the current one, they want to be mayor. No, I want to do as mayor. To be mayor to me is a means, is not the end. So I hope that we meet and I can show you some of the programs that we have done in the first year, because this is not something that we're going to do in 20 years. No, in the first year we got to have results. So I would love to have that champagne, enjoying specific results, a specific action that have taken place where we really have all Torontonians able to live healthier and happier.
Thank you so much. Gil, we want to be respectful of your time. Thank you so much for being here. It means a lot that you love this city as much as we do love it. Big thank you to you and your family and your team for organizing this and for coming to the world-renowned Stephan Dyer Studios. Diego, any closing remarks?
No, I just I wanted to wish you good luck with the race, and I guess that where can people find more information about you and about your campaign?
Oh, thank you. It's gilformayor.ca. Please go to that, gilformayor.ca. And one last thing that I want to make a comment is I hope that this inspires many, many people to participate, to be active. Yes. The other day I met a little girl from Angola in Regent Park. And her mom said, oh, she wants to be prime minister. So I said, this is fantastic. I said, you want to be prime minister? You will be the first non-Canadian prime minister. I will be the first non-North American being mayor. But I think you might have even better chance than I will have. But I do hope that from the point of view of the immigrants, especially the Latin American ones, I hope a lot of children will say, oh, you know what? If this guy wants to be mayor, maybe I can run for student council in my elementary school or in my secondary school. Or that people might want to run for the boards as trustee for the school boards, or for council, or for anything, or even within their jobs, within their things that say, here in this work, raise your hand, volunteer, do things, participate, be active. So I hope that in some way this adventure, or whatever you want to call it, that I have decided to give the city at least 4 months, 24/7, doing nothing else but trying to do this. I hope this will inspire other people.
It will.
To do things in fields that are completely different. It doesn't have to be in politics, but in other things, step up. This is just an anecdote. One of the things when I was thinking of running, I have 4 brothers, 3 brothers and 1 sister. So one of them said, Gil, you might have 1 in 1,000 possibilities to win, but if you don't run, then you are going to have 100% possibility that you're going to lose, or zero probability that you're going to win. So you have 1 in 1,000, or you have 0 in 1,000. And then the other said, I have known many more people that when they are close to dying, the last 6 months, when they know that they're gonna die, they regret much more the things that they wanted to do but didn't do than those that they did, even if they fail in the process. So I think that I rather, whenever I'm gonna die, I think that it would be better to regret, regardless of the result, is to say, well, I wanted to do that and I did it. I thought that I was ready. I thought that I had the knowledge and the experience, and that I could contribute to the city, and I went for it. Win or lose, I think that will be better than having the regret to say, in that 2022, I could have made a difference and I didn't do it because maybe I didn't have the guts, or I didn't have the push, or I didn't have. So that's another lesson that I hope that some people will get it. It's when we're not gonna live forever. So when we're close to dying, let's try to have fewer things that we wish we had done but we didn't do. Not because of lack of possibility, but because we were timid or some other thing.
Representation is so important, and you never know. Kids anywhere could be listening to this in Toronto, in the U.S., in Vancouver, and they will be inspired and empowered. And we're eternally grateful for you taking your time and for doing this. So thank you again. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end, my friends. We've come to the end of this incredible episode. Gil Penalosa, Diego Hidalgo, and Stephan Dyer on the Stephan Dyer Podcast. Ciao, ciao.
Gracias por escuchar el Stephan Dyer Podcast. Arrivederci, my people.